Well, I didn't have the podcast tonight because my sons were fighting and I planned on going, but then the axle went out of my car, so I didn't go. But I've been trying to watch it on live Facebook stream or something. Anyway, it wasn't very good. I was able to see the very last of it. My son Henry won, but my other son Claude didn't get to fight because the guy broke his jaw, I guess, training. But anyway, I'm glad he won. He was pretty wore out. He stopped the guy in the second round. I didn't get to see the first part of it, so I'm guessing he must have really been pursuing him. But that's not my topic tonight. My topic tonight was brought on by a long comment that I got on a video I made about women. This lady was talking about some different things, and it reminded me of the power women have when they're not trying to be men. Women think, or they've somehow bought into the idea from the narrative, which has been going on since, the 60s? I was born in 1960. The women's rights movement. And hey, I'm all for equal rights. But what it's turned into is like women trying to be men and thinking they're going to get the same power by acting like men that they believe men have had for centuries. What they don't realize is they lack in their inherent power, which is much more powerful. I would argue the point that it's much more powerful than the power men have. Look throughout history. Look how many men have been, let's say, propelled by the love, caring, and nurture of a good woman to great heights. And look how many men have been brought down, even nations, by the cunning, deceitfulness, manipulation, and persuasion of certain women. I heard it on Patrick Bet-David was talking the other day about how he has seen men making $60,000, $70,000 a year. Get with the right woman, he's making $200,000, $500,000, $1 million a year. But on the reverse side, he's seen where a man gets with the wrong woman and he starts losing, ends up losing everything. The lie that women have bought into is that they have to access or try to create or achieve power the same as a man, and they're never going to do it. Now, I'm not saying there's not outliers and exceptions, because there are. But a woman trying to be something she's not, instead of accepting what she is and using that inherent power, which I would argue is more powerful than what men have. Because you could take the most powerful man in the world. Who was one of them? Marcus Aurelius? No, Mark Antony, I think, was the one that got hooked up with Cleopatra and it almost brought down his nation. It may have. I haven't researched it enough to know what I'm talking about specifically, but I know it caused him a lot of trouble. And you can look at other men throughout history where they've got involved with a woman in a manner that didn't really empower them, but yet drug them down, and they actually lost power. Napoleon had a good woman, and when he was with her, he was doing well, but he got hooked up with this other woman, and his life started going downhill. And I'm sure you know personal cases where this has happened also. But back to the point is, women have a tremendous power of femininity, but it's been so downplayed in the U.S. in the last 60 years, or since 1960. Yeah, I'm 62. I remember when it started. You've come a long way, baby, to get where you've got to today. You've got your own cigarette, Virginia Slims. And all these commercials, women burning their bras. Women are going to be women. No matter how they shake your hand like a man, no matter how they dress in pants and whatever they want to dress in, they're going to be women. And as I said, they belittle their own power, the power of femininity. They just don't realize it, but that's all been brought on by the push of society or the governments or big business to get women out there working like men, because women, what is it, they spend about 80% of the money, but men make about 80% of the money. So the women are the bigger consumers. So big business wanted them out there making money so they would spend more money. It's a big lie. What a woman doesn't realize in these days, most of them, there are good women out there still in the U.S., a few. Our culture has changed so much, though. If they are the back of a man, if they stand behind their man, if they're there for their man, if they create a nice, peaceful home for their man and take care of him and love him, he is going to be much more successful than if they oppose him and don't cooperate with him. I could use the word submit, but I know that pisses off a lot of women. So let's say cooperate with him. And guess what? Crap runs downhill, and so does honey. Gravity, right? So if that man is successful because you as a woman are supporting him, encouraging him, if you are his #1 fan, guess who benefits from that? Oh, it's you and your kids. Duh. I think women have forgotten that. They've been brainwashed into believing that they got their own cigarette now, baby. They got their own thing. They don't need no man. Well, guess what? Men don't need women either, if you want to look at it like that. And what kind of attitude does that get us both? Humanity becomes extinct because we're all prideful and none of us need each other. That's really moving us ahead, isn't it? Let's all just fight and hate on women, and women hate on men, and men are misogynists, and women are whatever guys want to say they are. If we don't learn to get along, what are they saying? By 2030, 50% of the women won't be married, which means I guess 50% of the men won't be married either, right? Okay, well, you don't have to be married to have kids, but how many guys are opting out now because they're afraid to even mess with women because a woman can say a word or two and ruin his career, ruin his life? Or if he marries her, she decides she doesn't feel like she loves him anymore. She leaves him and takes half of everything he's got, if not more. And if they got a couple kids, he's paying for the next 18 or 21 years. I'm telling you. I've experienced that. I've lost everything 2 or 3 times. Almost lost my freedom twice, as I've told some of you guys before. False accusations, lost my kids, had my kids taken out of my arms, screaming and hollering 4 or 5 times. You don't think I wanted to hit the DFS worker? Of course I did, but I didn't do it because us men need to be able to control our emotional natures, our emotions. Very important. And that's the difference between men and women. Women have a more difficult time controlling their emotional natures than men do. Now, if any of you have had long-term relationships, and I've had 12 years the longest, I had many long-term relationships in my 62 years, you've been with a woman enough times during her menstrual cycle, you know that they get a little crazy. And they will even tell you, I've had them tell me, don't pay any attention to me, you know it's my time of the month. They're liable to say or do anything because their hormones get so off balanced. Now, do you really want a woman like that running the country? I don't think so. Now, of course, men have built the world, and they've also did a good job of destroying what they built. So there's an argument for that there too. But the bottom line is, if you get a man and a woman together, women are too emotional, men are not emotional enough sometimes, guess what? They work better together if they cooperate as a team. The man is the leader and the wife is the follower, and that's the way it works best. We always have to have a leader. The masculine leads, the feminine follows. Is that so terrible? A lot of women say, I don't want to follow no man. Well, really, you don't want to cooperate with a man? You don't want to submit to a man? But every day you submit to men. You submit to the laws of the land, which were made by men. Probably 99.9% of them. You don't drive over the speed limit because you're afraid a man policeman, more than likely, will pull you over and give you a ticket. So you submit. You submit to the higher ups at work, which more than likely are men, if you go high enough up, or maybe your direct leadership. But yet you'll go to work and you'll submit to that guy for a paycheck. He doesn't care about you. But you come home and you don't want to cooperate with your husband. Now, of course, you need a husband who is a leader, someone who is deserving of your respect, someone you can defer authority to. We all defer authority. Every day I get up, if I go out there and I follow the laws of the land, I'm submitting to the higher powers, the dastardly patriarchy. And look at the benefits I get. I don't have bars on my windows. Now, you guys have never lived out of the country, don't know how good you got it here. Where I lived in Latin America, you had bars on the windows and the doors were made out of steel. You couldn't get into that house when it was locked up unless you had a torch or a tank. And that's the way it had to be because it was dangerous, because of the poverty. and the lack of policemen. I was friends with the director of police there, and they had like 20,000 police for the whole country I lived in, and they needed 40,000. Corruption is on a very low level there. You can participate in it for 20 bucks or more, or less, more or less, which I had to do a couple times because I got pulled over for nothing. And guess what? Doesn't matter if it's nothing. You got to pay, but that's okay. That's just the way it works in those places. And that, to get off topic a little bit, when we talk about Tate, so many people, well, if he's innocent, he'll be proven innocent. Or if he's guilty, he'll be proven guilty. Bull crap. We will never know whether he's innocent or guilty. Of course, I lean toward him being innocent. If you want to believe he's guilty, that's fine. Maybe he is. I really don't know. Neither do you. And whether the courts prove him innocent or guilty, we will never know. I like his message. I like what he says. And I know it pisses a lot of modern women off and a lot of feminine men. Well, I grew up with men like him, talking just like he did. Men like him who love women. They don't hate women. He's not a misogynist. He's not prejudiced against women. But we categorize everything. You get a bunch of men sitting around, they're going to talk about, yeah, you know how women do this and women do that. It doesn't mean we hate women. Women don't do the same thing. You're damn right they do. They talk about how men are. What is that? Manese? What is it? Womanese, and then mansplaining. That's something they say. I don't give a shit if you say I'm mansplaining if you're a woman. It doesn't bother me at all. I'm not offended by it. So don't you get offended when we talk about the characteristics and traits of most women. It doesn't mean we don't love you. I've loved many women, and I put my life on the line for women. But yet, I've been called a misogynist too. Prejudice against women. Let me see. One of my daughter's boyfriend's mothers called me a sexist. What? And even her, if she was standing outside my house with me, and somebody come up to bother her or assault her, and I knew she didn't start it, and it wasn't her husband or boyfriend or lover, I would protect her, because that's what men do. Real men, they protect women. The Titanic is a great example, and there's hundreds of thousands of other examples throughout history that you people don't even know, that women don't even know about. But they forget about that. All these guys are haters. They hate women. But yet they give their lives for women all the time. How many men have died in wars to save women and children? We need to get real here. We need to get real about us needing each other, because we do. Men need women, okay? I mean, I live by myself. I'm single. I haven't been married for 12 years or so, but now I already have my children, so I don't need a woman to procreate now. But if you don't think you need women for anything other than that, you do need women for that. And I've told you guys this before. I raised my kids by myself, 6 of them for the last 12 years, without a woman. My mom helped out a little bit. She passed away many years ago. And they miss out on the nurturing and love and compassion only a woman can give them. I can't do that like a woman can, like a good woman can. I know that, and I can accept that. Do I feel offended, or do I feel like a woman is a sexist if she tells me that I can't nurture as well as she can? No, it's a fact. So what? So why do women get pissed off when you say a woman can't do the same things a man can? I've even had feminine men tell me, well, a woman can do anything a man can if she just give her enough time. Well, that's a contradiction in itself. Maybe she can do it, but she can't do it like a man. We're not the same. We got a comment here. Cool stuff. Oh yeah, my stuff. Thanks, Estrada Duque. Is that right? Duque. I do speak Spanish. Hablo español, pero necesita más práctica. Pero cuando me vio una persona de España, no de España, es castaño, de México, Honduras o Guatemala, hablo con él para practicar mi español. So my Spanish is a little rough, but maybe you understood me. I've always wanted to do some videos in Spanish, and I've taken some lessons I learned when I was in Latin America. I probably could do it if I just tried, because I talk to Spanish people and they say, oh, your Spanish is good, but I always think about the mistakes I make. But I have studied a little bit in the last year or so too. My kids all spoke, but they forgot, so let me see. Oh yeah. Yeah, thanks 2K. Yeah. Anyway, back to women. Oh, but let's talk about. Are you from Are you from the U.S., Duque, or have you lived out of the country, or how long have you been in the States here? Um, we have a lot of Spanish people in the U.S., I know. But talking about women, now I find that the women in the South Americas, Mexico, and down there are much more traditional and feminine than the women are here in the U.S. What do you think about that, Duque? Um, Now they are becoming westernized, but I was married to one for, geez, we were married 12 years and I had the 6 kids here. She was from Guatemala. Guatemala. The problem was she came up here and she kind of got Americanized. Even though we moved back down there we were down there for 6 years, she got to running with her single sisters and they got to telling her that she should have a better life. And you can figure out what happened. She got to running around, messing around, and long story short, I'm here with the kids and she's been gone for 12 years. So she went on to have another kid, but she regrets it. But by the time she regretted it, realized the mistake she made, I'd had enough. She'd cheated on me too many times, and well, there you go. And I'll tell you this, almost every woman that I had a long-term relationship with, I treat them very good. There again, you people who say I'm a misogynist, none of my 1,680 subscribers, thank you, but maybe somebody else who's watching who is not a subscriber, call me a misogynist. Every woman that I've been married to, everyone, except maybe my first one, no, she missed me after I was broke up too, but I screwed that marriage up. But the ones I was married to and the ones that I went out with long term, I treated them so well that they started to disrespect me. I was just too, how do I say, I don't want to say compliant, but kind of too. When a woman tells you that they want you to tell them what to do, tell them what to do because that's what they really want. But I kind of got taken in by the society here myself when they would tell you that, well, you need to let them make their own decisions, make their own mistakes. They don't want to make their own mistakes. You need to lead. Now, I was a leader in the first 30 years of my life in my relationships. But when I turned about 30, I started to buy into some of the programming we have in the U.S. about allowing her to make her own mistakes, allowing her to do this, allowing her to do that. Not that I'm saying you should control her, but most women don't want to be accountable for big mistakes. So they look to you to make the decision. But I had learned by a certain group of people that you need to allow people to make their own mistakes. And I'm not saying you don't to a certain degree, but most women don't want to be held accountable for the big decisions. Even sometimes when you make the decision, they will act like they don't want you to make it, but the bottom line is, if it's a wrong decision, they would rather you be accountable or responsible for that than they would. So remember, if a woman ever asks you, tell me what to do, tell her what to do. Because I made the mistake of saying, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You need to make your own choices. Yeah. Well, I used to tell women what to do before I was 30, and that worked real well. I've experienced both sides of that. But back to my original topic here about women having extreme power and femininity. And that's the one thing I'll say about Latin American women. They still know how to pump up a man's ego, how to make him feel good, how to make him feel loved, how to make him feel like he's important and special. Now, the Latinas are pretty jealous because I've gone out with quite a few of them, but they're passionate as hell. And that's what I like about them. Man, they're passionate, they're hot, they're warm. I mean, you got to take the good with the bad. The jealousy kind of sucks, but the passion, and when you're with them, I mean, if you're a man and you're not a weak man, I mean, they really give themselves to you and they're all in. And then if they get to where they're not all in, then you need to get all out. I've experienced that too. No woman wants to be treated like a queen, contrary to what popular media says, and social narrative, etc., etc., etc. And you hear a lot of them say, I want to be treated like the princess that I am. Well, you go ahead and treat them like that and see what happens to you. Look at the men they chase after. I've done both. Well, I never felt like I treated him like a princess, although I did have a gay guy tell me in my last relationship that I treated the girl I was going out with like a queen. And I did treat her pretty damn good. And guess what happened? She started getting bored and didn't appreciate me. And even though I told her, I said, hey, I don't like the way you're acting. How good can you stand it? Now, there's a question for women. How good can you stand it? I don't think she really ever understood that question, but what I mean is, I can treat you very well. I'm not talking about simping or bowing down or seeking their approval. I'm not talking about, that's not what I was doing. I'm not talking about the, I'm talking about when they do good things for you, when they treat you good, you treat them better than they treated you. I have yet to meet a woman who can handle that, who doesn't think that you're doing it because you're supplicating to them or you're concerned about them leaving or you're doing it for their approval and on and on. 9 times out of 10, if you give more than they give you, because I'm a grateful kind of guy and I'm a giver. I give a lot, not just with women, but with in life, in my work, with my friends. People need help, and I always give more than I get paid for. We'll say it that way. I do that for selfish reasons because I've learned the hard way that whatever you take in life from people will be taken from you multiplied. So I learned from that that it works the opposite way too. Whatever I give to you will be given back to me multiplied. Well, I'll give you an example here. I had a little trouble in the last 2 or 3 months. Work slowed down. Damn axle went out of my car. Let me read this chat here before it goes off. Brazil is mostly conservative, traditional, the feminism is strong there. Yeah, okay. It disappears before I can read it all. I have never been to Brazil. I hear some good things about it. I like conservative. Now, I'm traditional. I believe a woman should stay home and take care of the kids. Now, a lot of women up here don't like that. But think about this. Now, when I was married to my Spanish wife, she stayed home, took care of 3 kids. An American woman would say, well, what do you do? Like in terms of working? And she would say, well, I stay home and take care of my 3 kids. And they'd say, well, don't you work? It's like, I've taken care of kids by myself. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no sick days, no vacation, no days off. Don't you work, was the question they asked her. They belittle a housewife and a mother up here. But then you hear them say things like, I wish I could stay home with my kids. Well, guess what? Get rid of the 2 Escalades and the 5,000 square foot home, and then maybe you can afford to stay home with your kids. It is easier to go to work and let the daycare take care of them from 7 o'clock in the morning until 4 or 5 in the afternoon than it is for you to stay home and take care of them, especially in the West, the U.S., because it's belittled. What more admirable career could there be than raising the future of your nation? Think about that. It's I think I read the other day, a $47 billion a year industry, daycare. That's quite a bit of money, right? Big chunk of change. But yet, it's not valuable enough for a woman to stay home and take care of her own kids. It's belittled here. But yet it's a $47 billion a year industry. That doesn't quite make sense, does it? Doesn't make sense to me. Why is it that the value of your children is not as valuable as the dollar or the car or the big house? When I was a kid, we never had school shootings, never had anything like that. But guess what? When I was a kid, the mothers were raising the children. And if they were in babysit daycare, we'll call it that, it was a grandmother, a friend, a mother, another mother. Now, most of our kids in the nation are being raised by the minimum wage daycare worker who we have no idea what her morals are, what her values are, what she's putting into those impressionable kids' minds. What is she putting in there? When kids are from 0 to 7, that's called the impression period. Look it up. They don't have the conscious realization to say, this isn't true, no, that's not true. Whatever the authoritative figures put into their mind, they believe 100%. They can't differentiate between the true and the false. So you're trusting people that you don't even know to imprint your child's mind. Oh, and let's say nothing about video games, Xbox, Call of Duty, and all that. Hey, my kids play it, so I'm not going to get at you if your kids play that. But what does that do to the mind? Here's the deal. You're either programming your own mind or someone else is. Now, until you're of age to figure that out, you really have no choice. But after that, it's up to you. They say we come in contact with some 4,000 to 5,000 messages, advertisements a day. And guess what? None of them are your agenda. They're all someone else's agenda. Okay, I could go off on another video about that, but we're back to the women and the power. Think about this. If you've ever met a really good woman, maybe you had a long-term relationship with her, and she was a good woman. She was your best cheerleader. She cheered you on, she encouraged you, she told you you could do it. And then maybe you've had one that's kind of an anchor who always drug you down. You was always worried about her, concerned if she was being faithful, she wasn't honest with you, she drug you down. Many times if you're we'll say a successful man, if you're trying to make something of yourself, you will meet women who just want to be with you. They want to be part of your life. But few of them will be able to do what they have to do to be a productive part of your life. What do I mean by that? They like what you have, they like that you make money, they like that you have a home, they like that you're disciplined, you get up every day, you work out, you do the same thing, you go to work, you have dreams, you have goals, you have a vision. What woman would not want a man like that? Every woman wants a man like that. And if you want to be the man that all women want, become that man, and you can do that. Here's what happens. Few women can make the grade to stay with a man like that. I've had a couple of them. So here's what happens. They get with you, and you guys go out. Maybe you don't vet them properly. Maybe you do. And then down the road, you guys get married or you live together, whatever it is, and she finds out that she has to get up every day and do the same boring thing every day to have the life that you live. All of a sudden, it's not exciting anymore. She doesn't feel it anymore. Because it's a lot of work. Because you're a hard worker. And that's why you have all these things that she admired at first. But when she lives with you and she sees how much work it is, and you become part of what you're around, either she's going to be with you and work with you and do what she's supposed to do as your woman to encourage, support, and push you forward, or she's not. And if she's not, she's dragging you down by your coattails. And I've experienced that before. Very few women can stay with a successful man who's trying to make something of his life. And as I said at the beginning of this, I lost everything 2 or 3 times, almost my freedom, because I have gotten with women like that. Now, I don't think it's that they think they're going to get that way, but it's just once they get with you, I know the one, we had a few kids. It's the day in, day out, raising the kids. That's why I ended up with 6 of them, raised them by myself for the last 12 years. She just couldn't take it anymore. I was good to her. I took care of her. I guarantee you I take care of my women better than anybody does. Am I bragging? Maybe, but it's a fact. They came back to me afterwards. The last one said the same thing, that I was dating for a little over a year. She said, she said, I regret that I didn't value you. I know what she regrets because I took care of her. She ain't never going to find nobody to take care of her like I did. My last ex-wife told me the same thing. She says, you're just too good to us. We just don't appreciate you until you're gone. And now, even though when I was with them, I told them, because I seen it, I said, look, I said, I'm going to leave if the disrespect keeps mounting. Because if you allow that crap to keep going on, they will walk all over you. They'll be cheating in front of you. I mean, like right in front of you, literally. It'll get that bad. They'll start hitting you. King Dre talks about the different levels of disrespect. And it will get that way. I've experienced that years ago. I allowed it to get that bad because I was so wrapped up in the sex. It just doesn't work. It's just what happens is you don't call them out on their crap. You let it go. You just, maybe you don't want to mess with it. You just keep letting it go and letting it go. And then they'll get to where they're trying to hit you. I mean, you can really get in trouble here in the States with that stuff, even trying to protect yourself. In our country here, if you have a domestic quarrel, this was years ago when I had those problems. I don't deal with that crap anymore. I don't get in those crazy relationships with those hot girls that are great in bed but are crazy as hell. Okay? In our country here now, if you have a domestic and you call the police, somebody's going to jail. And guess what? It's usually not the woman. Somebody, it's just the way it is. That's the law. Somebody has to leave the house. So you don't want that to be you, but it could be. So vet properly. Well, my son is supposed to send me the video. Back to women before I get on that. I would not have these 6 kids. I've had 10 kids altogether. I mean, I didn't raise all of them. Let me get this chat before it disappears. Outstanding observation. Ryan Stone also mentioned today to find. Okay, yeah, I like Ryan. I've listened to Ryan quite a bit. He's got some real practical, solid advice. I would recommend people listen to him. Hey, I tell my boys, I go along with Andrew Tate on this. He said the same thing, and I've been telling my boys this. If you want to have kids, I don't recommend you marry in the U.S. I've been married 4 times here, okay? Now, one time I did marry a woman from another country, made the mistake of bringing her back here. She pulled the crap on me that one of my ex-wives did. It's a long story. Read the book, Coming Back Home, The True Adventure of Mark Daniels. Available on Amazon. But if you want one to really help you, read The Power Is Within, because that's where the power is at. I show you ways in that book how to get rid of the blockages that stop you from becoming the man you came here to be. Now, where was I? I lost my train of thought. Talking about Ryan Stone. Kids, women, value. Where was I? Damn, I'm losing it here. Maybe it's time for me to quit. But the kid, okay, I got kids. So I got 10 kids, right? I've had 10. I adopted one. I married a woman with a kid. I don't recommend that either. He's not my kid anymore. He went back to his real father. And I was a father to that kid for 4 or 5 years, and I haven't heard from him for I don't know how many years. So I've had all these kids, right? The last 6, a couple of them I raised for quite some time, and then they got taken away through the courts, divorce, etc., etc. But the last 6 I was with the whole time, from the time they were born, except for maybe a year when we were separated. But I was very fortunate to be able to get my kids. And she went back to her country, and she's been gone since then, okay? Now, I tried to make that work. I went to counseling. I did everything. But she didn't want it to work. She wanted to run and gun, right? As I said, she regrets it now, but too late, right? Too late. And that was a killer, man. It wasn't so much. I thought it was losing her, but what it was, I was losing the dream. I wanted to have 15 kids, right? And she did too, and she wanted to have a good life and get away from her family and the poverty she lived in down there. And she had good intentions, but she just didn't have the character to play it all out. So that's just the way life is. But I didn't get what I thought I wanted, but actually I got what I wanted. I mean, I'm really happy with my kids. Like I said, 2 of them went to fight tonight. Henry won his fight. Claude didn't get to fight. But I wouldn't have these kids if it weren't for a woman. How would I have kids without a woman? And she was a good mother, except for there was a lot of dishonesty in those first 6 years that I was ignorantly unaware about. And when I found out about all the lies, it was like I lost my best friend. And I've never believed that a woman can be your best friend, and that's one of the reasons why. Now, she can be your lover, she can be your wife, but your best friend, more often than not, needs to be a man or your mentor. That guy, your friend, your mentor, you can tell him everything. You can cry in front of him if you need to, but if you cry in front of him too much, he's going to kick you in the ass and say, get up and be a man, do something. I'm not one for all this vulnerability crap. Do I cry? You're damn right I do. Sometimes I cry out of tears of joy. I seldom cry out of sadness. Now, when my mom passed away, I did, but I don't do that in front of my woman. I don't do it in front of my kids. Rarely have they ever seen me cry. They need me to be strong. They need to know that I cry, but I can keep it together no matter what happens. I'll tell a little story. About 2 years ago, some guy came here. I've told this story before. This is what kids want. This is what a woman wants. Some big guy coming, about 240, banging on my door looking for his woman. Well, my son just happened to be friends with his woman's son, and he'd been drinking this guy. So my daughter comes running up here. She's afraid. I don't know what's going on. I just finished working out. So I go out to the veranda, and I look over there. I can't see him. I said, hey, who you hunting for? He comes out there and looks up at me, kind of cockeyed like, and staring at me. He said, who are you? I said, well, don't matter who I am. I said, who you hunting for? Didn't say anything to me. I said, well, you need to leave. I told him twice from upstairs he needed to leave. He wasn't leaving. So I had no idea what this guy was up to, what he was doing, what his motives were. He was kind of aggressive, and I said I could tell he was high, drunk, or both or something. So I grabbed my mouthpiece and went downstairs, stuck it in my pocket in case something's going to go down. And I went outside. I told him 3 times probably he needed to leave. He finally says, okay, I'll go. He crosses his arms, he sits down on the rock wall. I said, well, I guess the guy's not going to go. But I could tell he'd been drinking, so I didn't want to just nail him with a punch, because as you guys know, I used to be a professional boxer, and I still spar, I can still fight. So I didn't want to just nail him with a short right to the chin. So I asked him to leave one more time. He wouldn't go, so I brought my hand up underneath his chin and knocked him backwards over the wall. He flipped over, rolled over, crunched his glasses, got back up, and he said, "Watch this." And I'm like, okay, here he comes. He didn't. Okay, and then he got up, he started to walk away. I handed him his glasses, which got all bent all to hell. And he said, "I'll be back." And I'm like, oh, crap, he's probably going to get a gun. Anyway, so he's walking his vehicle, so I call the police, 911, right? They spent 15 minutes trying to ask me questions. I have no idea what it's about. And they never sent a cop because the lady on the line got pissed off at me. Fortunately, he didn't come back with a gun because at that time I didn't have a gun. It's like, the reason I'm telling you this story is because you need to be able to protect your wife and children, your woman, your children, or your woman, or whoever is in your household. And the police aren't always going to be there in 5 minutes. And in my case, they didn't even come. Had he come back with a gun, I would have had to got the kids and head out the back door and took off. Fortunately, he never came back. I found out later he just got out of jail for a DWI, so he probably didn't want any trouble, so that was good. I didn't hurt the guy. I just used sufficient force to get him off my property because he was a threat to myself and my children. And that's what you need to be able to do as a man. And that's the kind of woman, or that's the kind of man a woman feels safe with. You don't have to go around getting in a fight all the time. You just have to be able to handle yourself. Very important. And there have been other times in my life where men have come up to my women and made a dangerous situation in foreign countries, and I've dropped them to the ground. Okay? Only because I had to. I asked them to leave. I told them to leave me alone. I told them to leave her alone. They would not do it. They were a physical threat, so I physically extinguished the threat. Now, women feel safe with a guy like that. Very important. But I think we grew up in such a society here with our manicured yards and these neighborhoods where the police drive through every 2 hours. They'll be there in 5 minutes. That people don't realize that it can be violent out there. Now, who was it? Einstein asked, the question you need to ask yourself is, do you live in a dangerous world or a beautiful, lovely world? Well, I think I live in both. I know the danger's out there, but I don't think danger's coming to get me. But I like to be prepared. I like to feel confident. I'm 62 years old. I don't think any different now than I did when I was 20. I can still fight. And like I said, I spar with the boys. I like to stay in shape. I feel good about that. I feel confident about myself. Let me see. John Fitch, yeah. I had John on my show. Now John's, maybe he's a little smarter than I am because he won't hardly fight at all. And I got this thing about honor, probably because what he says makes sense because you never know if the guy's got a gun or what if you punch the guy. You never want to use more force. Like I said about this guy, I didn't nail him. I thought about hitting him with a short right on the chin, but it would have been devastating. I punched pretty hard. And like I said, he had been drinking, so I didn't do that. But like John said, what if you hit somebody and they fall down and hit their head and they die, then you're in a lot of trouble. So what he says is really wise advice. I got this thing about honor because I grew up in a different time, so I've been in situations where somebody has said things to me that were disrespectful, and I've got up in their face and backed them down, or maybe I would have been wiser just to walk away. So each man has to do what he feels is right. When there's a physical threat, of course, you need to protect yourself. But as I said, I have this honor thing that sometimes I would be better off turn and walk away. Now, when I'm fighting on a regular basis, which I don't do anymore, you can almost walk up to me. You couldn't spit in my face, but you can walk up to me and call me a pussy, and I just don't care. Because if I'm going to the gym 2 or 3 nights a week and taking a beating or beating somebody else up, I don't want to fight anymore. But when I'm not fighting, it's a little bit different deal. So I have to watch myself because I do love to fight, even though it makes me afraid before I fight. I have that nervousness or fear. If a guy says he's not afraid to fight, he's a liar. He's a liar. Everyone has fear of it. Mike Tyson said he was afraid. Everybody's afraid. If you're not afraid, there's something wrong with you. You better be afraid because that guy can kill you. Anytime you get in the ring or anytime you get in a fight, you don't know what's going to happen. I got in a bar fight before I started boxing. Thought I was a tough guy, street fighter. Before I was 20 years old, it turned out to be a hell of a mess. I hit this guy. First off, the guy walks up to him at the jukebox. I punch him a couple times. His buddy gets up. I bust his buddy's head open with a chair. They throw us out of the bar. His buddy comes out with a knife, stabs one of the guys with me. I get the gun out of the car. I'm going back in the place to guess shoot everybody up. I don't know. I'm pretty drunk. Not sloppy drunk, but I got a buzz on. Fortunately, my friends wrestled me, took the gun away, and we took the guy to the hospital. He almost died, and I got in a bunch of trouble, and that's when I started boxing. Decided I didn't like these street fights too much. So you just never know what's going to happen. So in that respect, when I was talking about John Fitch, he's really got more sound advice for that than I do. Sometimes it's better to swallow your pride or disregard your honor. I'm just the guy that has a hard time doing that, so might not want to take mine. Because the way things are different now. When I grew up, you could have an honorable fight. It was no big deal. We used to have the picnics, the church picnics. Everybody get drunk. There was always a fight. Cops would break it up. That was it. It's not like that nowadays. So things have changed, although maybe I haven't changed too much when it comes to honor. But I got really off track for the women. But here's another thing. Every time I've ever been in a fight when a woman was there, they go nuts. It's like they start yelling and screaming. It's like, get away. Women aren't supposed to be involved in fights. Sometimes they'll jump on the guy's back. They'll jump on your back if you're fighting their boyfriend. They get hurt. They don't need to be involved in that. You need a woman to shut her mouth in those situations. Then you have these women that'll flip people off when they're in your car because they don't like them or something. Who's that guy going to stop and come after? You, not her. So once again, be careful what kind of woman you got that you're hanging out with. You definitely need to vet them. And I've made the mistake of not vetting them very well, because once you start sleeping with them, it kind of clouds your vision because they make you feel good. And you start overlooking things. And that can be detrimental to your future and your success. Well, that's about it. Didn't think I was going to talk this long. I hope this has been of value to you. Share this with a friend. Thanks, Duque. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name right. For commenting, I always like when we have comments. Somehow I need to learn how to get them down there longer so I can read them. But I'll figure it out someday. Have a great evening. Take care and stay out of trouble.